This episode is presented to you by NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. With NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV, you can watch your favorite teams' out-of-market Sunday games, plus watch up to 4 games at once with Multiview. Don't miss the race to the playoffs. NFL Sunday Ticket is now just $39 when bundled with YouTube TV, where you get even more football. Visit youtube.com/Spotify offer to sign up now. Lowest price on YouTube TV with base plan. Rest of 2023 season. Terms and embargoes apply. No cancellations.
Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card, the credit card created by Apple. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that you can now choose to grow in a high-yield savings account that's built right into the Wallet app. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone and start growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility requirements. Savings accounts provided by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
I would say welcome back, but this is actually our first attempt at a current-only focused pod, and I'm not sure what we'll eventually call it, but this is Thad Bell from the Blue Testament. I have Daniel Sperry from the Kansas City Star and Kirsten Ross from the Blue Crew, or is there a better way to introduce you?
No, that's pretty much what I'm doing.
One of the first things I wanted to ask you about was, if I understand correctly, you were the designer of the last tifo, or is it of all the tifos?
It's not of all of them. I did design the last one. Anna, one of the other Blue Crew leadership members, does some of them as well. But between the two of us, we cover most of them.
Right.
This one was fun.
Yeah.
This one, the laser eyes from low, staring at me as I was walking my parents, because of the media game. They came and they took my tickets, my allotted tickets for the media game. So I was going to be in the press box, and one of the 4 media members that are actually working at that event. And I was walking them to my seats, and just Lowe's laser eyes were just staring at me from pretty much every angle as I took them around the stadium into their seats. So pretty job with all the tifos have been really good. So including the 81.
Yeah.
So was there something that gave you that idea specifically, or?
Yeah. So during the Challenge Cup, when they did the low, or they had the low billboard downtown, and one of the other Blue Crew leadership members had mentioned something along the lines of Lowzilla, because it was so tall. And then I kind of created a design. And then after we did the AD one, I was like, okay, we could take this a step further. And that's when we really built out the design that what turned out to be what the tifo was.
So it's kind of funny. The biggest tifo that you guys have done is for almost the shortest
smallest player on the roster.
Well, I kind of jokingly, I messed it up. I was talking to some of the Cauldron people. I was like, so what's the biggest Roger one you've done? Just to make sure we went at least as big.
That's good. There's been so many Cauldron tifos over the years. I can't remember the last Roger one, but
there's one that people thought might be him, but it was never specifically stated it was him.
Interesting. Okay.
That was really, really big.
Huh. Maybe you guys should include a Roger and Low one at some point.
Good crossover. It'd be kind of fun.
Crossover pod or crossover tifo. Goodness gracious. My words. I'm stumbling.
Yeah, it could be Cauldron works on it and you guys work on the other one and merge it in the middle for 2 games in a row or something. That'd be kind of cool.
That'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
So hey, I'm just here to give you ideas. I don't do any of the work though.
Yeah, like I kind of made a little studio in the basement for the prep work on them, so it's been kind of nice this season.
So
That's good.
you must have a good sized basement to do the last one.
No, so I just kind of build them in pieces, and then we've gotten to use the North Kansas City high school band room a little bit to build them out and do a lot of the big painting.
I was going to say, when I wrote the story on the surface tension at the beginning of the year, Carrie had mentioned that, her band room and the space and kind of behind that whole area have been perfect for tifo painting. So good way to use publicly funded classrooms for even greater causes. So
Yeah, probably better than some of the uses that have been, but yeah.
hey, I was a band kid, so most of those classrooms should have been used very well. Very well.
Hey, you've heard stories about my daughter and music, so yeah, I'm completely in agreement. All right, I guess like the breaking news today was Haley Mace got called up to the national team.
Yeah,
So,
it's super exciting.
Was it a little bit of surprise or what?
I mean, I definitely took me by surprise. I'm not, I am, but I'm not, just because you haven't seen a lot of traction around U.S. national team players with the non-injured players on our team. But like I know that they'd mentioned AD a little bit, at least being kind of around the pool. But that was pretty exciting for Haley. She's played incredibly this season.
Yeah, I think I thought it was due. To be honest, fullback is a position that they're obviously in need of right now, as Crystal Dunn is sure joining the team for training, but it's not a body that you can put on a match day roster. And especially if you're going to lose Kelly O'Hara, then you really need another body that you can put on the match day roster, and someone who Vlaco put her in the ID camp before. I think that injury that she had in the Challenge Cup really hindered any prolonged resurgence throughout the start of the season. But in my opinion, it's no coincidence that by the time she really was back flowing and full up and down the field, fully integrated in the attack, both phases of the match, I thought that's right when the run started. Was that first game against Louisville that started that run was like a very good Haley Mace game. And I was like, okay, maybe she's coming back. Like, this is kind of what we saw for glimpses of those first couple Challenge Cup games in Louisville and Chicago that she was so electric in, but then that injury kind of messed things up there. So I'm glad that she got called in. I think it's good for Vlaco to call in a girl who is, is playing in, if you called up plenty of Washington Spirit players, you got to try at least call in a Kansas City player here, and they've been doing well. So somebody deserved a look in there. And I think if you just general national team opinions, if you continue to roll with players regardless of whether or not they're in form, doesn't send the message for them, especially when they're younger players, that they really need to push themselves and improve. People on the men's side like to get after Greg Berhalter about how he has chosen to do his roster, but I think how he approached the summer and leaving certain players out, giving certain players opportunities already qualified for the World Cup, build up games to the World Cup, testing yourself against opponents, but took a look at the fringe and created some competition with the fringe, left some guys out who, like Sargent, who had been key pieces of that run. And wow, look who's firing on all cylinders at the start of the season in Europe, because they were motivated by the fact that they had lost their spot. And so I think in the long run, I'd like to see Vlaco maybe not be afraid to do that more. I know he did talk about that in the press conference, that he didn't feel that players were at a point yet where they needed to, quote, lose their national team status. But I think at some point you have to figure out, like, this team, the U.S. Women's National Team's roster is set 1 through 18. We know who those players very likely are going to be, but we don't know about those fringe players. And the more competition you create for those final 5, 6, 7 slots, then in my opinion, the better off the national team will be when it comes to the World Cup. And especially if one of those top 18 players falls out due to injury or something like that, you've really created a competition to fill in that spot that is driving players' form up both in league play and with the national team. So
You wandered pretty far afield there, Mr. Sperry. Got all the way through the men's national team and Josh Sargent and all the way back to Kansas City again.
Hey, man. That's how
He
we
makes
do.
a good point, though. I think the men's team is a little better at rotating those fringe areas. That's one thing, like, historically, the U.S. women's national team has not been good at. I think there have been a lot of players who have gone to World Cups that maybe didn't need to still be on a roster.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody on this roster that you would like to see not on it?
This one's not as stark that way. She had asked me a couple of years ago. There's a few who I think it was time to rotate maybe earlier than they were. We can go back to, like, there's for sure names I think of back like 2015 and stuff where there were more talented players you could have brought or could have given more time to that could have made it a more efficient team on the field.
Yeah, I know in some of those World Cups, there was definitely players playing not in their best positions. I won't mention Lauren Holiday's name.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I did. Yeah, but I mean, I do know the point you're making about the men's national team, but they're in a spot where they've already qualified now and they can do it a little bit more. But I think Berhalter did do it pretty well in even going through the qualifying, as he called in a lot of different people, and some of it because he had to, some of it because he's taken a look at people. I don't know if the pool is the same. The pool for the men's side has expanded so rapidly over the last few years. I mean, it's went from, you used to have maybe 25 guys that were even in consideration, and now there's probably 150 guys that are at least in consideration. Not saying they're all ready to go on there, but at least in that, taking a look.
You're at least thinking about them.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be tracking. I mean, there's guys playing all over the place now, and you know, it used to be sit down on a Saturday morning and I would know exactly, okay, I want to watch 2 games, and that would include all the guys in Europe. But the women's game is completely different. Most of those players are in the NWSL. Pretty much, I think 1 or 2 in the Mexican League, a few in France, England that might be needing a look, but the vast majority of them are in NWSL. And you know, Baco can go to Children's Mercy Park and see a new team rotate through every week.
Yep.
I do think that part of that difference, though, is I'd be curious to see how the pool expands for the women once they get a CONCACAF like Champions League or in like Nations League kind of stuff going, where they have more things to play for. Because right now they are limited in the competitions they have to qualify up for, and there's a difference in playing for something versus playing in friendlies.
Yeah. And
like that Nations League and stuff, it makes a difference for the men. You get more opportunities to kind of establish yourself.
Yeah, I agree
Absolutely.
with
that. Yep. I mean, I want to see that happening sooner than later. Let's get more games against other competition besides just the, 2 games against North Carolina, 2 games against Portland, etc.
Well, too, like CONCACAF as a whole, like the countries themselves become a significantly more competitive, like, area than it was even the previous round of qualifications. I mean, CONCACAF qualifiers this time around was hugely competitive for women.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
that entire world for women's soccer is completely different than what it was just a few years ago. The quality is improved in every country. It used to be there'd be 2, 3, 4 countries that might be competitive with the U.S. I mean, the U.S. didn't win everything, but it was really just a very small handful. But now there's a dozen countries or 20 countries or that can knock the U.S. off at any given moment. And it's never going to be a cakewalk again to go through qualifying. It's never going to be a cakewalk again to go through a group stage at the World Cup. And that's actually all the better, because it means Nike sells a few less U.S. jerseys with somebody's name on the back, but it does mean that women's game continues to grow and spread.
Retweet, favorite. The only thing I'll add to this is that, like, I thought Greg called in a very large roster for that summer stretch where he had those friendlies. And I just wonder if Vlatko could have called in a very large roster as well, where he's calling in 27 to 30 women and to take a look at and see, really evaluate, get them in training and competition with each other. That was going to be my only comment as to how maybe he could further take a look at the pool, because he talks about players being in the pool, but a difference between actually being called into the national team. Well, let's get some of those players side by side in a training environment and see if his opinion changes at that moment. So that just one little thought that I thought I'd put back in there.
I'm actually hoping to talk to him later this week, so I will ask him that question. Or at least I'll try to.
Curious. Like in the past, people have come from other countries because they had a way to qualify to play for the U.S. Women's national team. I'm curious to see when it comes to like citizenship and people being on different teams, if the importance of cap tying is going to increase on the women's side as you see the region get a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
Do we always get the top players anymore?
No, it's a really good point too, because it used to be in when they were doing through like CONCACAF qualifying, and you looked at the Mexico squad, a third of them would actually be native-born Americans who had Mexican ancestry somewhere, if not more. You would see that in Canada, you would see that with England, etc. And so you see a lot of Americans on all those rosters. Now it might be much more competitive for some of those players. No, it's a good.
I'm with you on that.
And again, it's great for the whole growth. It's not as great for America being able to say we're the #1 team in the world all the time, but it's really good for the growth of the game.
It just means more the next time we get to say we're #1 in the world again.
Exactly.
Which I still expect America to be at the top for the next couple cycles at least, but it's just so much closer, and they will get knocked off more and more often. So I just hope it doesn't happen to poor Vlaco, because I like him.
Yeah.
Well, did you guys I'll help co-host. How's that? We'll say here for just a second.
I was gonna say, go ahead.
Did you watch North Carolina and Portland tonight? Watched a very good win for North Carolina, who is the opponent on Sunday for our Kansas City Current.
I did not get to watch any of it, but they are scoring 3 and 4 goals a game every game now for like the last 5 or 6 games since their players came back from the international break. Kind of sucks.
I didn't watch it, but I've seen some highlights and I've seen some of the stuff that kind of went down with it.
Yeah, it was interesting. They're lightning on the counter. I think we saw that in the Challenge Cup. We saw that in the game in North Carolina. But man, did they get forward really fast with very good players and technically gifted players that are willing to go right at you. And I think it's kind of dangerous for a team like Kansas City, who thrives on the press and thrives on numbers high, and can get hit on the counter. Kind of what we saw in that first matchup in Cary.
Yeah, for sure.
It could easily be another 4-3 game or 5-4 game actually with these two teams.
I did see Ordonez got hurt, so that could impact them a little bit going into the game this weekend, though.
Yeah, and you got to wonder. I mean, they're trying to play catch up on games too, I believe. So they're trying to get to every other week, every other day, they're playing a game is what it feels like. So they're going to be busy with those double game weeks, and as we've seen with Sporting and we've seen with MLS, how quickly does that kill legs, create injuries, and all that kind of stuff, and
because
lack of being able to practice, all that stuff.
They're just up to 14 games right now, and Kansas City is at 16 games. Kansas City has a game in hand on the two teams above them in the standings, and equal with Portland at the top. So I want to say
Kansas City is the only team, and Portland are probably the only two teams that haven't had a game postponed because of something.
Yeah,
COVID,
we got close.
Whatever.
Yeah,
we got very close.
And they probably took a loss because of that. They didn't cancel one when they had 5. I think it was like 5 players out. Being low was one of them.
Yes. Yeah, both that entire road trip.
Players. There was impactful players out.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they had the COVID relief player activated and actually came in for a few minutes for that game. I don't remember what her name was. Sorry. I didn't even realize she actually did. She was the COVID relief player for somebody else like the week before that.
Wow. It's a pool of players. What it sounded like. when I was trying to talk to people about how they were going to be able to play those games. There's a pool of players that they can kind of call in based on, they have a scouting reports out and they know, okay, at this position we need this kind of a player and we'll grab this person. So
Kind of like MLS pool players or goalies, pool goalies.
Goalkeepers, yes.
Right. So, Kirsten, you have been a follower. Because I still say this is the same team from FCKC, even though they don't get the stars. When you move all the players and all the draft picks and all the resources from Kansas City to that place out west and then back here again, it's the same team. Yeah. So you follow this team forever. How much fun are you guys having this year with them? They started off not so great in the regular season. The Challenge Cup was really pretty good, but the regular season was kind of terrible to start. But just building and building and building and being more consistent and more dangerous, and just kind of a fun team to watch. How much has that meant to you? How much fun is it for you?
It's been a blast. It's been really cool in that there's a lot of Blue Crew members who joined us as we were still growing towards the end of the FCKC days. And so it's been really cool for those people to finally get to experience what it's like when we're winning. There's a core group of our leadership that we were in Portland, we were in Seattle for championships, but there's a lot of people who weren't, who saw some rough seasons. So that's been really, really cool. I'll be honest, I know for a lot of our original core group that's still around, we weren't worried at the beginning of the season. I mean, we were disappointed that we, had as many injuries as we did, but we've also seen championship teams start really bad and come around about the same time this team turned it around. I mean, if you look at when the FCKC championship years, we weren't good to start the season ever. No. We started good some other years, but faded. But when we actually won things, we didn't start very good. We had to kind of come on hot late, which is what you want to do.
Yeah. That was actually one of the things I always thought about Vlaco teams is I always felt they started a little bit slow, but because then you would fine tune that team and they would just get better and better and better and better. So by the end of the season, they may not have been the hottest team. They may not have been the highest scoring team, but they were just clicking.
Yeah. And there's components of Potter's system that kind of remind me of those peak FCKC years where you didn't necessarily know where to find people on the field. It's a very fluid system, kind of like what he played with the players. And I mean, I can think of so many players with him where we would sign somebody and you expected them to be one thing. And by the time they really started making a stamp on the field, it was in a completely different area of the field. I mean, look at Yao when she played. She was not designed to be where she, she was an attacking midfielder. And she ended up anchoring our defense. You could say the same thing about several different players that we've had. Merritt Mathias was another one, and another attacker who ended up becoming a great winger, similar to kind of what they done with Haley Mace.
Yeah, I even think of what's impressed me the most is it takes a player like let's say Addison Merrick played in a 4-4-2 in Louisville, played a little bit as an outside back, sometimes as a center back. She's come here, and even though she hasn't been starting a ton, she fits in really well as an outside of the three center backs. And CC Kaiser, again from Louisville, she played a bit very true number 10, very cam player. She's even told me, she had so many defensive responsibilities on her, but she gets put in a system with ball winners beneath her that are very, very active players. We haven't even seen Chloe Lagarzo on the field yet, but she's got called into the Australian national team. I mean, there's another midfielder, ball winning, very tenacious midfielder that also fits into the equation in there. That's ability to play underneath her, and then it frees her up. And so the ability for Potter to find players, and even for management to find players that, knowing where they want to play them within that system, it truly brings out the best qualities and traits out of those players. I think the injuries we talked about kind of hamstrung them too a little bit, where they had to play Elise Bennett as a striker, like an out and out striker earlier on in the season. And know that that's been her when she's been at her best. She's been on the wing,
Mhm.
driving with the ball at players and forcing defenders to make difficult decisions, and she's willing to lay it off. She's willing to take shots from tough angles. So like all those little things about the system has just been really kind of interesting to watch, and how the system is very skill set based versus role, like an exact role, or like the roles are tailored to the skill set, not so much that we are trying to fit you into the number 10 role, despite the fact that you may not have like the best defensive work rate, kind of a thing. And so and you're in a spot that you're really relied upon to get back, you don't get back, but you've alleviated that pressure because of other players that you put on the field around them to kind of make them better. So I think that's been an interesting, like when you're working with the coach year one, like covering Sporting is really easy because I know like exactly what Vermees wants out of almost every single position. And you're trying to learn, as this coach is trying to learn, about the roster that he has and how he can best use it. So that's been kind of a fun challenge along the way, because he doesn't like to give away any sort of secret. And so talking about like what the system has turned into, and what you were saying of like, you think a certain player might be at a certain place, say, oh no, we see them as a winger or a more advanced player with Claire, like, you know, she's been a true midfielder in France. So I'm thinking, okay, she's going to come in and be a very much deeper lying player, and all of a sudden she comes in and she's kind of much more attacking minded, but she's killing it. And you're like, oh, okay, way to go. You've done your homework and you've figured out the right ways to get the right skill sets in the right system. So that's it's a bit of a props to everyone for doing that. But it's been kind of fun to see that all shape out on the field, because I haven't had to. This is the first time in a while I've like really had to learn something new about a soccer team that I've covered, and that it's kind of fun. Frustrating at times, but kind of fun.
Yeah, and kind of difficult. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Loera is another good example of that too. She's had as a rookie, been thrown into a lot of different roles this year. I mean, filling in for Des when she's out on international duty and stuff, that's not an easy position to fill when you're otherwise played more of an attacking position or a center back. Des plays like a very specific and key position on this team in terms of the way she intercepts attacks and triggers our own. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a rookie coming in, but she filled in so well in that role. So well.
Yeah. And as Desi continues to joke about that she should have retired 5-6 years ago, you're like, okay, well, we know where Alex is going whenever Desi does choose to hang him up, because seriously, those 4 or 5 games that she played in that role, I was very, very impressed. More so than other times that I had seen her in that role earlier on in the season, especially in the Challenge Cup. There's a couple times where she came in as the DM and I wasn't 100% sold on it, but yeah, that as the true 6 and just kind of a destroyer in the middle, that was kind of fun to watch her put in some crunching tackles here and there and spray passes into the channels and stuff like that for attackers to run onto.
It reminded me of like Buzzkowski and Des, like when they both played for FCKC. They're very different and playing the same role. Like there's different ways you can play that role, and Buzz was more of the intellectual and just always positioned in the right spot, whereas Des goes after a little bit more of the crunching tackles. And I think with Loera, she kind of started out more the other way, and then when she was filling in for Des in those games, all of a sudden you saw that crunching tackle, the more attacking mindset come into it, and it really changed kind of the way that whole midfield worked.
Yeah, back in those FCKC days with Buzz and Des, that was because it was usually the double pivot back there, because it was he usually went with the 4-2-3-1, so they were a really great complement to each other. Because like Buzz didn't have to run as much because she knew Des would, knock the ball loose. She just needed to know where to be to pick the ball up and move it to somebody else. That's why Loera was kind of really impressive during that time, is because there was a point like, you really hate to see, you always want players to get called up and represent their national team, but there's times you go, oh man, I really wish they weren't going to go because these are serious crunch of games here. And then I was like, yeah, okay, you can call Des up again. Yeah. I mean, no offense to her, no disrespect, but it was almost as good, if not better at times.
It's wild the depth this team has. Like to me, it blows me away that you can lose basically, like, if you're going to compare it to MLS, your 2 DP signings.
Yep.
I mean,
And
you compare it directly to Sporting KC in a 9 and a
like
and a midfielder, right? Like, goodness gracious.
and it's crazy. Like, yeah, we struggled a little bit to start the season, but it just took a little time to gel. And once they kind of figured out how to work the roles in the team with who we had, it's amazing how well things have been interchangeable. And because of the quality of depth, they can rotate the squad a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, we didn't have the same roster starting a game for a long time this season. I think it's only happened a few times. So
yeah,
that's
if you want to talk about players that have been thrown into different spots, to me, Low kind of accents that hardcore, because at the beginning of the season she was kind of playing as the 10 because the midfield was crowded with Desi, especially those first 2 Challenge Cup games. It was Desi, Sam, and Victoria Pickett as the midfield 3, and Low kind of playing deeper in, while Lynn and Kristen Hamilton were charging forward up a little bit wider, but as 2 strikers up there. And it worked. They were creating tons of chances, high quality chances. They were dangerous, but just kind of turned her into a true 8, almost like very much plays like her own husband does on the field, and maybe a little bit more, slightly more attacking talent than Roger these days. Roger in his early days, I think might have had the cake there, but just in watching her really blossom into this really good box-to-box midfielder, very comfortable on the ball, and the service and kind of the spiritual leader has been very, very fun to see. And how easily she was able to adapt to 2 different roles, but how well this second role is really fitting her as well, because she's pretty accurate with her ball, with the passes that she plays. And I think that was something that was missing very early on when she was higher up on the field, is they were misplaying a lot of balls from the midfield, from the back line forward passes. I mean, the passing rate, the passing percentage, completion percentages were below 65 almost for like 3 or 4 games straight there. And it was really, really rough to watch. Now you watch this team pass and move in tight spaces and split lines and stuff like that, and it's like, who the heck was this team 5 or 6 weeks ago? But it's players like Lowe who really stepped up and helped create that tempo and created that ball movement within the players to really be so dangerous as they are when they turn teams over.
I think they need to still work on improving that, though. That passing.
I agree.
It's not where I would hope a championship winning team would be. Obviously you can have different styles for these things. You can have teams that never are great at passing and just always, lump it forward and go. But I don't see that's where this team needs to be in the future. But we'll see. We got just a couple more minutes. What's that?
We came a long way from last year's passing percentages. Last year felt a lot choppier even than this year.
Oh, definitely.
That's true.
But it's also a vastly different roster too. I mean, there's a good amount of roster turnover, and a lot of those young players that came in that were either from the draft the previous year or the draft this year that have helped some of that. And then it just helped to gel all that. So we'll say.
Yeah.
Speaking of Pickett, that was another big news story this week that we didn't even touch on. We only got a couple minutes, so just real quick, Sperry, surprised,
just because she was really starting until they decided to put Lavage into the starting lineup last week, and now she's out. But highest possible return at that position, in my opinion, that they were going to get. They needed to create room because the Garza was coming back. If you're getting called in Australia, you're going to be contributing on the field sooner rather than later, in my opinion. You've gained clearance from your medical, your high performance team to play.
She might only have been cleared to go train with them, much like Dunn was.
Which I'd love to see the press release that tells me that, but go ahead, Kristen.
I'm curious if also part of that delay has also been, I don't think they've done their qualifiers yet. I'm wondering if she was being protected too for qualifiers.
Yeah.
Because qualifiers are still coming.
For them, that makes it. Well, they should. There's a host though, right? So they should have auto qualified.
if they lump them together with like Olympic qualifiers, like some groups do, they may still
Okay.
have qualifiers to do this year.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense then. I do not follow the Asian Women's Soccer Confederation as tightly as I do CONCACAF.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering because of that if maybe if they have anything that goes on around that still.
Yeah.
Like the Olympic.
That's a really good point,
That's a
and
good
I'll try
point.
to look that up. But it feels really hard to follow the Matildas because I went looking for an announcement with something on that and couldn't find it. So the only announcement came from the current. I couldn't find anything from Australia. Perhaps it's coming out now because daylight and all that being different there. But I also couldn't find anything on the reggae girls because they apparently don't put out any info either. So.
Yeah.
I want to give Victoria Pickett a shout out real quick, just because, like it sucks from a fan base segment, just because she went out of her way to really connect with the fans, I think, in Kansas City. I know our supporters group got to know her a little bit this season and had some outings where we got to hang out there a little bit. And I just hope she knows how much we love her back here in Kansas City. I know she said she does and everything, but that's one of those players that I know FCKC, we have our people like that. And I know she's one of those that's going to always kind of have a special place with Blue Crew, just because she really made a point to represent the city and get to know the city and was proud to play here.
Yeah, it's one of those moves that I definitely understand the move, and I understand the need for it and the return for it. But she was such a classy person every time that I've ever had to deal with her that you can only wish her well, except when we play against her, and then we hope she sucks.
Yeah,
that was pretty much a goodbye message.
Yeah. I think it would have been great to see more like final product from her. And I think at some point when you have a roster this deep, and the competition happens, then like if you haven't grabbed that spot as yours 100%, then I think you kind of open. It opens up for moves like this to happen in a way, which is just part of the business here. And that's the sucky side of sports, is that this is a business. This is people trying to think about how can they always be better. And sometimes that's going to supersede the personal aspect of, how good of a player she was in the locker room and how good of a person she was in the community. And, it's hard to trade those pieces away, but that's why you get big returns like you did, because they are that
surprisingly big returns.
Huge return.
Yeah,
but
you don't pay $200K for the locker room person. You're paying $200K. That's essentially a Lynn Williams, which no offense to Victoria, but that's what the highest scorer in the NWSL that was active coming into this year, versus a midfielder who had a goal and an assist.
Yeah, agreed. Big return. You really can't say no. And to that, and if Gotham really want her, then hopefully whoever the heck their head coach is going to be is actually going to use her right.
All right. We really are down to a minute now. I know I kind of said that earlier, but just to wrap up, it was fun to get together and just talk current, except we went into national team stuff. But anyway,
that's okay.
Appreciate you coming on, Daniel. I appreciate you coming on, Kirsten. Hopefully you had enough fun that you'll come back on and talk to us some more.
Yes.
Deal?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. And I don't really have a good outing to do, but thank you. And hopefully somebody listens.
Adios.
Adios.